So I say make success convenient and make failure very inconvenient.
Hello, agentpreneurs, and welcome to today's episode of the Daily List Report. As you saw, back on today's show is Kamille Rose. She's a regular. If you don't know her, you are not watching this show, and you should be. Of course, while you're here, please consider subscribing to the channel. Click that little bell so that you're notified of all future episodes. Kamille is back today for part 4 of our 5-part series. We started off talking about success, commitment to leadership, masterful communication. Today is all about defeating these overwhelming feelings of stress, which, given what's going on in the world right now, is very topical, and I hope that you all take a lot out of today. And the last of the series that we're going to do is how to stay focused by engaging with clarity. While I got you here, a couple of Kamille's links. These are all put below. Her website, theultimatelife, lyfe.com. Definitely check that out. You can learn all about Kamille and her coaching programs. Of course, she's also on YouTube. Give her a subscribe there. She's got some great videos. In fact, some of the things that we talk about on the show are also covered on her channel. And then, of course, give her a follow on Instagram at both The Ultimate Life as well as I'm Kamille Rose. You don't want to miss any of this amazing stuff that she has to share with us. She's back on the show today. So without further ado, Kamille, welcome back to the Daily List Report.
Thanks, Randy. Thank you, agentpreneurs. Very blessed to be back again. I appreciate you guys.
We're blessed to have you, Kamille. Thanks again for doing this. I'm excited for part 4 of our part 5, our 5-part series. It's Monday. I'm doing the best I can here.
I got you.
That's right. So, today we're going to talk about stress, what you call overwhelm, right? And there's a lot going on. There's lots that transpired over the last week that is certainly not contributing positively, I think, to anybody's stress levels, regardless of how you feel about what's been going on. It is a stressful time in this country. And so why don't we kind of start there? Why don't we talk a little bit about, you tell a great story, right? You have a great kind of analogy, right, for defeating this. It's a bowling one. I grew up bowling. I used to have a bowling ball. Like, I know what you're talking about. But why don't we kick this off and let's talk a little bit about the topic of the day.
Sure. So the bowling analogy that I think you're referencing, Randy, is I like to ask folks, especially when I'm coaching them, do you remember when you were a kid and maybe you went bumper bowling? And even if you didn't, basically what bumper bowling is when kids would bowl, there would be these little guardrails that would go up so that the ball wouldn't go in the gutter. And obviously that would help you bowl and hit the strike zone. And so I tell this analogy because I want you to see your goals, your vision, the life that you want, the business that you're trying to create as the strike zone, right? Any activity that you do that hits the pins in the strike zone, gets you closer to your goals, that's what we want to get to. But in this game that we call life, we also have our gutters. And your gutters are anything that takes you away from your focus. Your gutters are the things that distract you. Your gutters are the things that pull you away, essentially, from the activities that move you towards your strike zone. And so it's your responsibility as an agentpreneur, as a leader in your family, as a leader for your team, to design guardrails. Put up the bumpers. There's no shame in that game, right? There's no reason that you got to say, I got to be able to bowl without the guardrails. And you will get there. And that's called self-discipline. But to be honest, especially in this climate that we're in right now, as Randy was mentioning, there's a lot of things that can pull you into your gutters. Maybe constantly scrolling your Facebook feed lately has just drained you. And you're like, oh, I can't keep, reading this rhetoric. I can't keep reading people's negative comments. Or maybe constantly being glued to the news is getting to you. So that's an example of a gutter. Then the question becomes, what do you do to guard against that? What is the guardrail that you put up so that you're not constantly scrolling your Facebook feed, so that you're not constantly watching the news when it drains you of energy, so that you're not always picking up the phone when that negative Nancy or negative Ned friend calls, right? So these are the things you can control. And if you remember from our very first episode that we did together, I mentioned that there were the 3 APCs, the 3 things you truly can control. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm just curious, Randy, do you remember what the A, P, and the C stand for? The things you can control?
You're totally putting your attitude,
Yeah.
your perspective,
Yep.
And C is your, it's not clarity, that's for sure. It is your, oh my gosh, I got so close. What is the
All
C?
good. Think about it. Like, what else could you fully control? Your attitude, your perspective, and your
Choices.
boom. Gold star. You got 100.
Yes. All right.
Well
I
done,
feel
my man.
happy.
Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, so that's an example of a guardrail tool that I create to help people is remember the only things you can control are your attitude, perspective, and choices. So when you're trying to control the other person's opinion, you're trying to change their mind and it stresses you out to be in conversation with them, remember, give it up, let it go. It's not something you can control anyway. So it's really important that you recognize what are your gutters, aka what are the things that pull you away from the strike zone? What are the things that actually drain you of energy? And then, okay, what are the guardrails we need to put up in order to stay out of the gutters?
Yeah.
Make sense? Hopefully
No, it
that makes
makes
sense.
perfect sense. It's a great analogy, and I think most people probably have some familiarity with what this is, and it's a great analogy, and it works. And it's funny, Camille. I don't think it's funny actually. Now that I say that out loud, but when I was preparing for this conversation, and I was watching some of the work that you had done before, right? It's a bit ironic, but I'm looking at it, and then my phone is just blowing up with notifications. This news source says this, and this social media thing says this, and Slack says this, and email says this. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what we're talking about here, right? We're going to get into some practical tips here in a moment, which is how to clear off some of these things. But I was like, how am I supposed to stay focused on your message when I'm being inundated with all of these messages? And it was like, oh, that's what I should do. I should turn these things off.
Absolutely. So that's a perfect example of a guardrail. Like for me, I don't get any notifications other than phone calls and then a text message. So I don't even have the little red dot that comes up on your emails. You know, how people will see that and they'll be like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, I have 5,000 unread emails. And honestly, a quick question you can ask yourself is if you look at something on your phone or on your desk and you immediately respond with a, oh, I got to get to that, that's a gutter. Anything that causes you to feel energy, anything that's pulling you away from feeling energized, inspired, motivated to go towards the strike zone, any one of those needs to start getting eliminated. So for me, I was that person. Same like you, Randy. I'd look at my phone. It's like, oh my gosh, I have 1,000 notifications. And for what reason, honestly? Like, do I really need to know that that LinkedIn person commented on my post?
Unless it's me. Unless it's me, Camille. Come on.
Yeah,
Jeez.
that's different. When I see
Yes.
Randy's name, I just have a special little
There
note
you
right
go.
there. But part of that is the self discipline of saying, well, Camille, what if those things do happen? Great. Then I start now allocating time to say, now this is when I check my social media from 9 a.m. to 9:15. That's all of my social media time. And then I go to Instagram, I go to Facebook, I go to LinkedIn. I control how much of it I want to see and for how long. Versus the way it's designed right now, it's kind of like a casino thing where you hear the ching ching and you're like, oh, I got to check something. Oh, I got to check something. And by the time you know it, you've had 12 hours of screen time and about 2 hours of work.
Yeah.
And really, it was for nothing. And let's be honest, social media, websites, they're designed to keep your attention, to keep you glued, to get you into the rabbit hole of, I'm on my fifth YouTube video and I have no idea how I ended up here. Or I'm on my 20th Facebook video and I have no idea how I ended up here.
Yeah.
So you want to get very good at starting to eliminate some of the distractions. And I would say start with your phone. This is the first most practical place that I notice is a big distraction for people. And here's an example. If social media really is a distractor for you, you're the type of person who's like, man, I constantly go here just to get away from the stress of the day, then make it very inconvenient for you to get to your social media apps. So I say make success convenient and make failure very inconvenient. So maybe here's a more tangible example. Studies have been shown that people who leave snack foods out on their kitchen table or their kind of like the kitchen counter actually tend to have higher BMIs, way more, have more body fat percentages than people who don't keep any snacks or food on their kitchen counter. Maybe they only keep like apples or lemons, but no chips, no Oreos, none of that is easy for them to see. Why is that? Because it's not easy for them to grab in their environment. Success is about creating convenience, so the apple and the lemon, and then failure inconvenient, so the chips and the Doritos away in the
Yeah.
pantry. right?
Yeah.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
So, same thing. When you design your phone, don't make Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn maybe the first app if you know it takes you away from work. Kind of dig for it. Make it so that you have to actually search for the social media app in order to get to it. Because by the time you know it, you'll give up on it and you're like, I don't want to do it anymore. Same thing
Absolutely.
with people who tell me, I don't want to read my phone first thing in the morning. Then don't put it next to your bed so that when you wake up, you can just move your right hand and it's there. Make it
Right.
so hard for you to get your phone. Put it in another room. Go put it downstairs. Where now you got to get up, you got to stumble over your running shoes, you got to get to the kitchen, so on and so forth. Make sense?
Or worse, it's the middle of the night and you wake up and you reach for your phone and then you're awake for 2 hours with the, that light in your face when it's all dark, right? That's not healthy either.
Right.
That's really interesting. So, Kamille, is this all about sort of energy? Is this about conserving and directing energy? So, you talked about, I think in your video, even, and I want to give some more examples. So the phone is probably the best one. But you're talking about open your closet, right? If there are things in your closet that cause you stress or discomfort or whatever, right? There's lots of things that we can look at and remove in order to really drive focused energy.
100%. So I call it rigging your environment for success. And that is one of the keys that most people don't talk about. So you're really lucky here on Agentpreneurs. You won't hear this too often from people because people will often talk about mindset. You got to have a positive mindset, think a certain way. And people are like, that sounds great. How do I do that? So then they talk about taking massive action. Okay, great. Change your daily habits, change your morning routine. Sounds good. Great. But they still don't actually transform their behavior. So what is that? And in my studies and in my experience as a peak performance coach, what I have observed is that there's a third key. Yes, there's mindset. Yes, there's action. But the third key, and I think one of the most important, is environment. So you need mindset, action, and environment. Environment is the third key. And what that means is you must become very good at paying attention to your environment and anything that drains you of energy, start fixing those things, start getting rid of it. And often simple is best. So, a great book I recommend if you haven't read it yet is Essentialism by Greg McKeown. In fact, I have it here because I'm doing a 100 Days of Focus program with my clients right now, and we're reading this book. So, this is the book I recommend. And
Nice.
it's really about, if you can see, there's a picture here, I'll pull it up for you, that looks like our brain usually. Very messy, all over the place. We're going in 100 different directions, but only one thing is essential. So let me see if I can pull it up on the screen.
Yeah, it's clear.
Cool. So usually we're like this, right? Our energy is boom, 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 all over the place. A little bit here, a little bit there. But what you want is to get to this point where you're just hyper focused on the one essential thing in that moment that matters. And the way we get there is starting to make your physical environment also look that way, right? So if you were to look at your desk right now, if you were listening to this podcast, or you're standing in your kitchen, wherever you are, and you look around and you say, oh my gosh, it is so messy. I need to get this thing together. I want you to take the next 5 minutes, stop the podcast, and just clean it up. Get it to a place where you look at your desk and you feel inspired again. And here's an example of a recent experience with my client. I gave him a Rig Your Environment for Success challenge. And I said, all right, tell me what in your office right now, when you're looking around, do you hate? And he goes, these blinds. I look at these blinds in my office and I just hate them. And I was like, all right, change them. And he goes, Kamille, how is that going to change my productivity? I said, just trust me. 2 weeks later, he comes back on our group mastermind call. And he goes, hey, guess what, everybody? I changed my blinds. I got these automatic shutters. He even got the one with like a remote control. And I guess it can go up and down
Nice.
the way he wants it.
Yeah.
And what he didn't share with us was behind this beautiful window that was getting covered with these ugly blinds, I guess was an amazing view. And he never really paid attention to it because he just hated looking at the blinds. So he would go into his office every day, really stressed, really begrudgingly. Now he said every time he walks into his office, he's so stoked. He loves his blinds. He hits that little remote control. It goes up. He looks at his view. He's so energized for the day. And he's been able to knock out more calls within a day. And all he did was change the blinds in his office.
Yeah.
Right.
It's amazing.
So,
oh, go ahead, please. I'm
yeah.
sorry.
No, I was saying it's as simple as that when it comes to rigging your environment for success. So pay attention to what drains you and start fixing those things.
But I want to put an even like sharper point on this for people, right? Because you would argue, and I want you to now convince everybody that these things aren't just minor annoyances. They're not just distractions. They're not just little things that contribute to our stress. That, as you say, they actually take money out of your pocket, right? And it's crazy because you're like, how could that old dress or outfit or suit that doesn't fit, that's me by the way, in my closet, like take money out of my pocket? But explain that, because I think it really drives the point home.
All right. So let's say we have Realtor A and Realtor B going to a listing presentation. They have the exact same numbers. They've got the same CMA. They've got the same actual brochures. They've got the same suit on or the same dress on. But Realtor A walks into that listing presentation high energy, excited, also somewhat relaxed in their approach. They're very confident in what they're ready to do. And they're there just listening intently with the client. They know what to say. They're very prepared. And then the client gives a little bit of pushback, but because Realtor A is also so relaxed and they know what to say, they're able to deal with the objection quite well. And then you have Realtor B. Again, it's all same materials, all the same information, but they walk in, they're in a grumpy mood because they bumped their knee on something going out of their office. They came out of their car, which was extremely messy. And they're just feeling frustrated going into the meeting. They say all the right things, but then the client pushes back, and then the realtor actually kind of doesn't have enough energy to handle the objection well. And they're like, well, this is just how it is in this neighborhood. So just hearing this story, who do you think is going to win over that client? Realtor A or Realtor B without knowing everything, right? So it's really hard for me to believe people when they say, oh, energy doesn't matter. How you bring yourself or present yourself in a situation doesn't matter as much as just the actual numbers or the material present. It's not true. Because again, people do business with those that they know, like, and trust. And they're going to like you if you're also taking care of yourself, taking care of your energy. So all of the things that got Realtor A to that high energetic point was preparation. The things that they needed to do to get to high energy. They didn't just wake up with high energy. They rigged their environment for success. They felt good about their office. They felt good about their car. All these things were intentionally designed versus Realtor B, who lived life by default and was like, these things don't matter. Just grab the listing presentation. Let's go. You
Yeah.
can tell. And that's why they say the devil's in the details. The person who does well in business pays attention to those details.
Yeah.
If you ever go into, for example, a very beautiful tech office or a beautiful restaurant, what makes it so special? Why do you like going to that environment? Because they probably took care of all the details. The toilet paper in the bathroom is filled up, right? The floors are nice and clean. They keep putting the plates a certain way. That tech office is very minimal. They don't have a lot of clutter everywhere. Versus walking into an office that's super messy or a restaurant that it looks kind of dirty. They didn't mop up that corner of the floor, so it looks really gross. So that can be the biggest difference between the successful agent and the unsuccessful one. The one who's putting money in their pocket or the one who's leaking money away is the attention to the details that's going to make you feel good about you so you can serve your client at the highest level. All of those things matter. People pay attention to you and everything that you do.
I think it's really great advice, right? And just hearing you say that, I think everybody would agree, right? And so I love this concept of rigging your environment. One thing it reminds me of is even what you wear, right? So it's somewhat common, like at least in the tech world, where, and there's two famous examples of this, Mark Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs, who basically wore the same thing every single day. Like Steve Jobs and his turtleneck and his mom jeans and his tennis shoes, right? Like that was his outfit, and Zuckerberg, whatever he wears, right? But he basically wore the same thing every day. It's also, though I don't claim to be in that same camp, right? That's why I wear this black V-neck every single day, right? For this show. It takes a decision out of my day. I have 1,000 things to think about, and what I'm going to wear for the day isn't going to be one of them for me. Doesn't mean it has to be that for you, but this is about rigging my environment, right? I know what I'm going to wear. I've got like 50 of these things, right? So there's always going to be a clean one that's pressed and ready to go, and then I can just show up because in my mind, there are other things that I need to be thinking about and spending my time, right? Now, that may not work as a real estate agent, right? But the same concept applies, right, Kamille? These are the types of things that you're talking about. It takes a source of stress out of my day-to-day life, which allows me to redirect that energy to places that I believe are more productive.
Oh, absolutely. And what you're talking about there, even if it's not necessarily wearing the same black shirt every day, but the concept of reducing decision fatigue
Mm-hmm.
is very important. And that's why rigging your environment for success, part of that is automating certain things in your environment. So,
Yeah.
take for example, let's say you're a realtor and you do need to suit up every now and again. So, maybe there are three basic suits you're constantly wearing, or three basic dresses, and then maybe you just change up your accessories and your heels every now and again. So create a system or a schedule in your week where it's like, okay, every Sunday I pick up my dry cleaning, every Friday I drop it off, so that at the beginning of the week, those same three things that you're constantly rotating are on deck Monday through Friday, or
Yeah.
whatever days for you. My husband is an example of this. He has the five basic suits he constantly wears. He might interchange his tie or his shirt because he's in financial advisement, but he's got a schedule of when he drops off his dry cleaning, when he picks it up, and then the suits are ready to go. So every morning when he gets dressed, he's not thinking of what to wear. He already knows, okay, boom, 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 these are ready, these are pressed, these are clean. He doesn't have to make a lot of decisions. So that's an example. You can automate, and systems are very important in rigging your environment for success. I like to say, get it out of your head and into a system. Anything that you start to do more than twice, think about creating a system for it so that you're not reinventing the wheel, as they say. I'll give one more example just to be a little more tangible. So we like tech in our house, and so we have a Google Assistant, and so we've set up, they call them routines. If you look up Google Assistant, there's different
Yes.
things. Siri has them, right? And then whenever we say good morning or good evening to Google, certain things happen in our house. So our lights go on, our espresso machine turns on, our playlist goes on, all these cool things. So we don't have to think about that. And we have free technology on our phone that's going to set it up for us. Same thing with good evening. The minute we say goodnight, certain lights go off, the alarm goes on, et cetera, et cetera. The temperature set up a certain way in the house. So use those things to your advantage because they're not out of touch for most people now. They just don't utilize it the way it needs to be.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I love that. I love that. That's a great example. I've got a lot of that stuff in my house and some routines set up, and it's really, like you said, it just takes a lot of that decision fatigue or the things that you have to do, the things that just chip away with your energy or at your energy. I want to
Yeah.
cover one more thing before we wrap up today, Camille, which is
Mhm.
this idea that you put out there of finding a community of calm. I think this is really important. And what was the is this the Jim Rohn thing? You're the average of the five people you spend the most time with. Was that Jim Rohn, or am I messing that up? This is your
No,
world.
no, absolutely, absolutely. That is definitely one of the principles behind that idea.
So talk a little bit. What do you mean when you say find a community of calm?
Well, it's, I think, by default. So let me back up one second. There's two types of life you're living: the life of design and the life of default. If you live a life of default, everything is going to stress you out. The media is going to stress you out. News will stress you out. People will aggravate you. People will frustrate you. That's typically the world that we hear people complain about. But that's a life of default, meaning you're not taking any sort of conscious discipline to design an environment of success for you. You're just reacting to things versus the life of design. And I would argue if you're an agentpreneur listening to this podcast, you are seeking, how do I create a life of design, which means the life I want to live, the life of success. It does require more discipline, but you must get clear on the types of physical spaces, the work ethic, the routines, and the people that you keep yourself around. Now you're no longer just reacting to whatever comes your way. You are actually responding to the things you've designed. And one of those things, as I mentioned, is your environment. Part of your environment are the people you keep in it. And so I often ask, do you have a community of calm? And what the calm is essentially any type of person that fills you up. They feel energized after you talk to them, or you feel energized after you talk to them. You feel inspired, or you feel even relaxed and just like, I could be myself around this person versus the people you're around that cause you stress, anxiety, all of these different things. So if you don't have an intentional community of calm, whether that's a group mastermind, maybe you have a Facebook group you go to for support, maybe you have a counseling group, maybe you've got a business networking group, but a group of people that you consistently speak to on a weekly basis to give you new perspective about the stress, about the business challenges, about the creative challenges of work, that's what you need. And I say this because most people complain to me about, man, it's just so stressful out there. People piss me off, people bother me. And so I ask them, okay, who are the people you spend time with that inspire you, motivate you, educate you, and empower you? And then they tell me, well, there's no people like that. Everybody's just really annoying. And I'm like, that's you being lazy, though. Because did you really take the time to go seek those people? Because I guarantee they're there.
Right.
You just got to find it. There are so many mastermind groups. There are so many coaching groups. Find one that resonates with you. I'm not, advocating for any particular one because I think it's very unique and individualized. But for example, if let's say I resonate with you, then look me up. Find out, does Kamille even have a mastermind? Does Randy have a mastermind? Find out, do they have a group that they coach, work with, facilitate? Because there's a ton of them. And especially right now at the beginning of the year, as we record this, people are doing challenges together. Everybody's on that new year high, new year, new me. So it'll be easier for you to find that group that's doing a challenge together, but find that community of calm that is basically the antidote to the default of stress that you're encountering right now.
I really like that distinction between default and design, and I think that one really resonates. It's very clear to me, right? That I know a lot of people who just operate by default. You take what comes at you and you deal with it as best you can. In fact, I think to some degree people take pride in that. They're like, I just roll with the punches, like I'm flexible, or I just take life as it comes at me. And that is so fundamentally different than living a life of design, right? Where you are creating opportunities, you are creating a path, right? The things that are happening, the new default, right, is a result or a byproduct of the things that you've sort of put out into the world, or the people you've surrounded yourself with, or the career choices you've made, or whatever they might be. That's a really powerful concept. I like that one a lot, Camille.
Absolutely. And I'll add one more metaphor because you and I were just talking about this, Randy, before we started recording about cars. So
Yeah.
another analogy I give my clients, because I'm a peak performance coach. So one of my jobs is to make sure you are at peak performance. So I tell every client, imagine you're like a high performance race car. And when you watch high performance races, what do they do every couple of laps? Well, they do a pit stop, right? And then they check in with their crew, people who are experts at fixing whatever problems there are within the engine, so that by the time they get back on the track and they go full throttle, they're fully gassed, fully ready, fully aligned to go again and race. No racer rather, just keeps hitting the gas without taking pit stops. Why? Because you'll burn out the engine.
Yeah.
You'll run through all of your fluids. And then that's what we see people do nowadays. They're like, I work so hard, I do this, and then they burn out. And then they wonder how come they didn't win the race? How come everybody else keeps going? Well, they didn't know how to pause. They didn't know when to take a pit stop. And maybe they didn't have a good crew around them to help them check their levels. They're just hanging out with other people who know nothing about cars, nothing about mindset, nothing about business, nothing about relationships, emotional stress, and health. And then they wonder, well, how come nothing got fixed in my car? Well, look at your crew. Is that
Right.
really the best community of calm, aka pit stop crew for you to work with if you claim that you want to play at a high level? You want to race at a high level.
Yeah.
So I just want you to think about that. If you have never taken a pit stop, taken a break for yourself, checked in with a really good, coach, therapist, counselor, advisor, mentor, people who are going to check your fluids and levels for you and say, okay, you're ready to race again. Otherwise, yes, you will burn yourself out. And there's no pride in saying, oh, okay, I had the best car, but I burned out early. The people who win the race are the ones who race smart. And that's what I want for each one of you is the longevity of your business and your success, not just being a one-hit wonder in real estate or whatever industry you're in.
Well, you had a really good phrase, idiom, whatever you want to call it for that, right? You said, I'm going to butcher this, Camille, but basically you said something to this effect. You said, you can go faster alone, but you can go further together. Did I butcher it, or was that
No,
close?
that was perfect. That was
Right?
absolutely perfect.
So just to now mix these and to take that to your car analogy, right? Like you could be first in the race, right, if you never pit stop, but you're not going to finish the race. You need the team to do that. And most of us can agree or should agree that we're in this for the long haul. We're trying to build longevity in our careers, our relationships, whatever. And you can't do that alone.
100%. And there's an old proverb too that says, pride will be your downfall. So
Mm.
you had talked about earlier, like sometimes we wear it as a badge of honor to say, like, yeah, I got through it all by myself. I did it. I didn't need anybody's help.
Mm-hmm.
And that will only get you so far. It's like, okay, great, but then what?
Yep.
Um, my mom growing up would always tell me, and I think I mentioned this in our first call, I grew up in a big Filipino family.
Mm-hmm.
And she'd say, it takes a community to raise a child, it takes a village. And, my mom was a single mom growing up. So she relied heavily on my grandparents and my aunts and my uncles and my cousins. And there was no shame in that, especially in
Yeah.
our culture. It was like, okay, if a family member needs help, great, we raise them all
That's
together.
right.
Now, everybody gives my mom credit for raising me, but she always says, well, you know what? It was all of us that
Mm-hmm.
raised her, which was true. And I don't think that that's a shameful thing at all. So then I wonder, why is it any different for us when it comes to business? It's like a baby for a lot of people. Their
Mm-hmm.
business is their baby.
Oh
And it's
yeah,
like,
absolutely. That's how I think. Yeah. Yeah, it's
exactly.
true. Yes.
Right? That's why we put so much love and attention on it. So then allow the people who can help you, who want to support you, to do so. You do not have to do this alone. And I think that's where people get overwhelmed and stressed is they feel they have to carry the world on their shoulders when again you were never meant to.
Yeah.
So find that community of calm that will be part of rigging your environment for success. Find the mentors, the mastermind groups, the support groups that you need to gas up, take that pit stop throughout the week so that you can be full throttle again and be at high performance.
Well said, Kamille. Well, great way to wrap this show. Kamille, thank you again for being here. This is part four. I really can't say these words. This is part four of a 5-part series. We have one more coming up, and that is about staying focused and engaging with clarity. That's going to be next week. So, Kamille, thanks again for your time and for being here. I'm just so grateful for you.
Likewise. Thank you, Randy. And thank you, agentpreneurs. We'll talk again soon.
Okay. Bye, Kamille.
Bye.
All right. Well, there you have it. Really great show. So, a lot of us are feeling overwhelmed. We're feeling stressed. And two things, right, that we talked about today. One is this idea of putting guardrails up, rigging your environment, whether that's getting rid of clutter, getting new blinds, as Kamille said, changing the way that I don't know, the clothes that you wear, right? And probably most importantly, as Kamille said, rigging your phone, right, to get rid of stress, turning off notifications. I've gone through periods of time where I have like nested certain apps like on my 5th page inside of a folder that was misnamed, right? And I put stuff in there so it's not easily accessible. These are all ways for us to rig our environment for success and clarity and to avoid decision fatigue and to stay focused. And the second thing that she talked about is this idea of finding a community of calm, right? You can't do this alone. You don't have to do this alone. In fact, you shouldn't do this alone. So if you look at the people around you and they are not contributing to your success, right, your development, if this is not a community of calm, then you need to change that community. You need to be purposeful about that, and you need to make those changes. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Please go back and look at the other first 3 parts of this series. They're great episodes, great content. Again, subscribe to Kamille, subscribe to this channel if you like the content, and feel free to share as well. And until tomorrow, be safe, be healthy, be happy, rig your environment, find your community of calm, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.